And we are live, and this is the TWIS Minion Science Island Hangout. A full house here. We've got AJ joining us. How you doing, AJ? We've got Dale from up in Canada. Jani. Jani's screen is a little dark there, but he's over in Finland. And we have Patrick.
Always a little dark there.
Well, Patrick from Houston and myself from Connecticut. And I don't know about you guys, but we're having the hottest part of the summer right now. 90-degree temperature with humidity.
It's actually kind of nice today here. Let's see, what was it?
Yeah, that's good. Really, two primary...
Census.
Okay. Two primary stories.
It was 89, which is pretty nice.
89. The first story being Burning Man, and what I see is almost the perfect model for Science Island. And the second story, the second primary story, is going to be dealing with time travel. We also have a story about how the Milky Way is part of a newly identified galactic supercluster. Got a global warming story about alpine vegetation creating problems in California. We're very inefficient about how we design our homes. What could be a big medical story, the scientists discovered how to switch off autoimmune disease. And another story dealing with quantum computers or controlling ultra-fast molecules. A story about new therapy for cardiology dealing with heart disease. And if we get to it, cerebellum injuries hindering neural development and possibly the root of autism. Now, leaping into the science, the Burning Man story. And I'm going to screen share, because this is an article written by a conservative Republican writer from D.C. And a lot of people would think that's the last person in the world you would see at Burning Man. But he went there and he loved it. Guy's name is Grover Norquist. He said, "Someday I want to live 52 weeks a year in a city or state that acts like this. I want to attend the national political convention that advocates the wisdom of Burning Man. At Burning Man, everyone is expected to be a participant. Burners bring their artwork, their art cars, their personal dress or undress. Everyone is on stage. The story of Burning Man is one of radical self-reliance. An art festival in the middle of the Nevada desert. It takes hours to get there. You must bring what you eat or wear or need. You cannot buy anything there. It's a Western ghost town that springs to life. It's completely rebuilt, and then taken apart and disappeared. Each year, 65,000 people. A city that appears and then disappears in about a week or two. Some self-professed progressive whine to the thought of my attending what they believe is a ghetto for liberal hippies. There was a gentleman who skateboarded without elbow or knee pads or knickers whatsoever. I rode in a car dressed up as cats, bees, and spiders. Trucks carrying pirate ships and 30 dancers. I drank Asbenith, can't pronounce it. Anyone complaining about a Washington wine like me at Burning Man is not a burner himself. The principle of Burning Man, and I love this, is radical inclusiveness. A community that comes together with a minimum of rules demands self-reliance, that everyone clean up after themselves and help their neighbor. I was invited to speak to a group one night for an hour. Moments before I spoke, I was told the last speaker had a series focusing on psychedelic drugs, and his talk was about freedom. Lasted 2 hours, and he said he had a ball. One sculpture was a 3-story embrace, 2 upper torsos and heads facing each other. Took 2 years to create. 3 weeks to assemble in the middle of nowhere. Maybe about an hour to burn on a Friday morning. That's a lot of work. Indeed, there is entirely too much work involved in Burning Man for lazy people to get there. Never mind to build a camp or feed yourselves. You hear that Burning Man is full of less than fully clad folks and off-label pharmaceuticals. That's like saying a Bohemian Grove is about peeing on trees. Burning Man is a cleaner, greener than a rally for solar power. It is more about camaraderie and a sense of community than a church social. For a week in the desert, I witnessed more individual expression, alternative lifestyles, and imaginative fashion than anywhere. The demand for self-reliance at Burning Man toughens up everyone. There are few fools and no malingerers. People give of themselves, small gifts like lip balm or tiny flashlights. He brought Cuban cigars. Edgy but not as exciting as some of the gifts. And he mentioned on the last day at Burning Man at the Reno airport, a shoeless man, he had lost his shoes in the desert, was accosted by another dust-covered burner carrying sneakers. Try these, he said, they're my burning shoes, and the shoeless man accepted the gift with dignity. Patrick, I know, whoops, Patrick's gone. And Patrick gets fast. Ah, there it is, Patrick.
I'm back.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
Sorry, I'm making a smoothie.
And Patrick, you were at Burning Man.
2010, I was at Burning Man.
Your experience match the one of our friend Grover Norquist?
All except for one incident. I got in a fight with a guy over really nothing. He basically called me uncultured because I told him not to bring a camera to the Critical Tits Parade. And he felt very offended by that, apparently. I don't know why.
Wow, that's supposed to be radical inclusiveness. Camera,
so he ended up yelling at me for like 5 minutes. I just sat there and closed my eyes and let my sun by my car. But other than that, yeah, it was pretty good. It would have been more fun with other people that I knew, because I'm not that outgoing. I talk to like a handful of people. Well, like everybody there is pretty much an extrovert. So, but yeah.
What about the part about you bring everything you need?
No, you do. You bring everything you need. No one likes a moocher, but people will give you stuff if you walk around. I mean, if you come with absolutely nothing, everybody really hates those people because they didn't do any research or anything. I mean, like, I spent 6 months researching Burning Man before I showed up, so I knew exactly what to do and what not to do. It's a gift economy, and that's not to say you're supposed to like give everybody random gifts. I mean, there are people that do that, but that's not really what it means. It's more or less like this bandana. All my bandanas I bought specifically for Burning Man. Head covering plus like dust mask style. And so I had like 10 of them with me. And I think I only left with 2 because there were lots of people that didn't bring one, and so I gave them mine. So bring survival supplies, but bring more than you need, because there will be someone there who will need them. And there you can do the gift economy. Don't just bring random trinkets that are going to end up in what they call MOOP. It's matter out of place. It's trash. It's litter or whatnot. People just like. I had one. I was down by the man, the big statue of the man, whatever. They burn in effigy or whatever. And some random guy just runs up and like hands me like a book on meditation or yoga or something. I was like, okay, sure, but I don't really care about this, so it's not worth anything to me. I mean, I took it. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth, but that's really not what it's about. There are people who think that's exactly what it's about, and they come back to do just that, but it's not really.
They've got a great website.
Yeah, Dr. Kiki's a burner. She's gone like 5-6 times, something like this, probably more.
I think her husband's got an RV, so they took an RV with him this time.
Yeah, I went in a tent. I covered my tent in space blankets to reflect the sun rays. It worked really well. Best night's sleep I've ever had. But it was really noisy in the wind, and I felt really bad for my neighbors.
I guess that's one thing you got to prepare for.
I slept in my car like the last 2 nights, and that's really uncomfortable. I don't recommend that. Because it gets cold at night. Although you couldn't tell because everybody runs around without the clothes on, so it's like whatever.
The website's got a, what they have with the Carnival Guide.
You can check out my website for photos if you want.
Okay, you can share some photos. That would be great.
I'm actually thinking of going back next year. I know someone who works for Burning Man. Oh, I hope she still works for Burning Man. And last time I saw her, she said she could get free tickets for people. So I'm like, hey, if not, I'll gladly pay for it. It's not really that expensive.
It seems to me like it's a really cheap festival compared to a lot of the other rock. I mean, $380 for a ticket and $40 for parking. So that's $420, and you're bringing your own food. Hyperlink didn't work here. But you're bringing your own food. You're bringing your own water. You're bringing everything with you. So your basic cash outlay is $420. That's cheap.
Plus, if you have to drive there, and it's in the middle of nowhere, so a couple $100 in gas. And you got to bring your own food, but you'd be buying that anyways if you're staying at home. So
yeah, and you drive, but you'd be driving most of the time using your car anyway, where you live.
And
so.
when I went, I was thinking like camping, and so I was thinking like camp food. I had all these power bars and like trail mix and stuff. No, just bring real food. It's way better. Should bring the normal stuff you would normally bring. But you got to cook it and everything there. So you got to bring your own stove or a gas stove or what have you. You got to bring your own water. I brought twice to 3 times as much water as I needed. I think I still had. I brought 3 big plastic, like 5-gallon jugs or something. Let me find it.
No, water would be the main thing. I mean, you can survive without food for a couple of days.
Oh, that's right.
A little food, but you've got to have water.
Can't go in the morning.
There we go. What was that?
Can you go out as you in the morning?
You're like breaking up on my end. Sorry, I can't really hear what you're saying.
Oh, I'm breaking up. I was just thinking about different ways to gather water in the desert, and I know you can make like little catches for the dew that forms in the morning.
Yeah, so you're not allowed to dig on the playa. So that would be a no. Because that's how you do that. You dig a hole and then you put a tarp over it and you put a rock on it, and then usually you'll use that as your urinal, because then it'll distill your urine into water, and you put a little cup in the middle of it, and it collects on the tarp up top, and then it drips into the cup. So that's one of the game.
That's the kind of thing you want to practice, though.
They have a lot of really disgusting porta potties. But I'll tell you a trick. At least this was the trick the year I went. They had, so everybody pretty much, it's laid out in a half circle or a 2/3 circle, kind of like the wings on an eagle sign or something like that. And then the streets are the streets radiating out are like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And then around it, it goes, I think it's alphabetical or something. But anyways, in that area, that's pretty much where everybody camps with their cars and whatnot. Like they park their car and then they set up their camp right next to their car. But their car never goes anywhere. You're not allowed to drive your car at Burning Man. You go, you park it, build your camp, then you walk around or bike around, or you can have an art vehicle.
Right.
They call them monster vehicles. They have the DMV as Department of Monster Vehicles.
Do you have to get, I would imagine, pre-approval?
Yeah, you have to register everything. You have to if you have a camera, you have to register your camera, even if it's a camera phone. They want to know everybody's taking They want to know everyone who is taking photos because they had a lawsuit about you're like it's like what goes on at Burning Man stays at Burning Man except everyone's photos or whatever. So it's like they want people to be held accountable if like someone's nude photo shows up and they get in trouble at work. They want to be able to sue that person and say because you knew you had that camera, you weren't supposed to do that. Because they had someone who tried to make a porno or something, like Rainbow Festival thing. Yeah, they got really pissed off. Anyways, the trick, there's a like a walkout camping area. You park your car and you walk out a ways, and then you set up a tent. So it's kind of secluded, and then there's a row of porta potties over there. No one uses those porta potties except for the guys that camp there, so they're really nice and pristine. Well, as pristine as a porta potty gets.
As I understand, a lot of people use bicycles and things, but could you walk easily from one end to the other?
You can. It'll take you a while, and it might not be the most comfortable walk. I mean, if you're on a bike, you're in the middle of the desert, so if you're on a bike, you got a nice little breeze going past you, and that kind of whisks away all of your sweat and whatnot. It's not really a sweaty event. It's high altitude, so it's really dry air, and it's not terribly hot. I mean, it's like a mile-high desert. It's like Denver as a desert surrounded by mountains.
I remember Kiki was talking about how some of the people have bare feet, and they don't bother bringing shoes, and they go walking around in the desert, and pretty soon their feet get pretty messed up.
It's an alkali desert. So that's the other part. It's something to experience, but it's really like I don't like chalk dust, and that's basically what it is. Like I don't like. If I was to pick up a piece of chalk, I'd probably put a glove on first because I hate the feeling of chalk. Like I just hate it. So having like dust storms and dust storms, not sandstorms, dust storms. Big difference. Sandstorms will rip the flesh right off you. Dust storms you just can't see. But yeah, it's alkaline, so it sticks to you. And then your whole arm's covered in like chalk dust, basically. Which is why people wear face masks, because you don't want to breathe that stuff in. Because I think I had a cough after that for like 8 months. I should have brought like an actual like respirator mask for the dust storms. But the dust storms are cool because you can't see in 5 inches in front of your face, but you can look up and see the stars, which I thought was kind of cool. It's fun to get. I mean, you get lost in them. It's fun and whatnot. Sometimes there's not a dust storm. There's not dust storms there normally. It's just that all these people come in and they're kicking up all this dirt and whatnot, and then it gets in the air and the wind catches it, and then there's a dust storm.
I can handle being dirty for a while. That doesn't bother me too much. I can remember at Woodstock, basically you go dirty for 3 days. Now, here at the Burning Man, it's probably better organized.
Dirty for 7 days, but not everybody stays for 7 days. Some people only show up for a few days and then they leave.
Okay.
Some people will leave before the man burns. Not everybody cares about the man burning. There's more there for the experience. Although, if you saw the man burning this year, that was interesting. They've had a live webcast of it for the last 2 or 3 years. The very first year, you could control the camera, pan, tilt, zoom, and whatnot via entering commands in the chat room, which was fun. Apparently, they didn't like that because they took it away. But I think with the invent of Twitch, they should put it back in. Just because then you could like zoom in on what you wanted to see and whatnot. So
you can wash with sand. I don't know about dust though, but you can wash with sand.
Yeah, this wouldn't work. You wouldn't want to. It might be good to block the sun because I got a wicked sunburn when I left. But that was only because I went around without my shirt for half a day. I shouldn't have done that. I had my backpack on. I had a backpack tan for like 6 months.
How about you, AJ? You ever been to a festival of any kind?
So many I can't recall them all.
The 50th big festival. What's a big festival you've been to, if you can remember?
Well, I went to a bunch of like Lollapaloozas. I There's many I can't even begin to think about how many there are. I was just looking at all my tickets, my concert tickets, and it's a stack like that thick. I really need to go through it and recall all been to.
There you go. How about you, Dale? Any big festivals in Canada?
I never leave my house.
I don't know, Yanni, about Finland. You guys have outdoor festivals, winter festivals.
Yeah, and computer festivals.
The only festival that I've really been to was back in '69, and that was Woodstock, which, as I say, was completely different from Burning Man. Not that well organized at all, but the atmosphere would have been the same. And for 4 days, well, you want to have water. And I didn't mind being a little bit dirty for 4 days, and you can put up with stuff for 4 days, maybe even 7 days. There's stuff you can put up with, and like you mentioned, and I think even more so at Burning Man, where people help each other. They have resources. They have more people with resources. I'll screen share your photo thing.
Sure.
Patrick.
Yeah, I mostly hung out around the art installations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really spend much time in town. I don't really. I mean, there's a like everybody has there's what's called theme camps. You can go by yourself, but if you go as a group, it's a lot more fun because then you pool your resources, and then you got really nice food and places to stay, or big tents, or possibly your own private porta potty for that group. Yeah, so these theme camps will host events, and they'll register the events beforehand. So when you go into gate and you give them your ticket, they'll hand you an event calendar or event list or whatever. And there's thousands of different events. I tried spending my time to flip through it and read when I got there. Just too long. I was missing most of the stuff while I was reading it, so it's so you just kind of wander around and find stuff. But the thing was probably half an inch thick. It was just a list after event.
A really amazing art festival.
Yeah, they have some really big sculptures. The reason I went was because I had this idea for this photo project thing I wanted to build. And it would be this three-dimensional interactive thing that would take up some space. And they give out art grants. And so I applied for the art grant. I didn't get it. They're like, hey, this is still kind of cool, but you should come out and see what we actually fund. And so
wow, there's a picture of an actual boat.
Yeah, it's a land yacht in a dust storm. And so that right there is the center tent. That's where they have coffee. That's the only thing you can buy there besides ice. They sell ice and coffee. Otherwise, money is banned. If they see you using money, they kick you out. It's only for ice and coffee, and all the proceeds for that go to the town that's 15 minutes away, to give them solar cells and stuff like this. You can go and volunteer, and if you volunteer for 40 hours during the course of the week, you get a free ticket for next year. I don't know, I guess. Also, tickets, when I went at least, there was a 3 or 4 tiered system. The first tier is really cheap. As soon as they run out of those, though, they rank up the price, and then it keeps going 3 or 4 times. So they went up to $500 or $600 that year. But they also have hardship tickets. So if you want to go and you don't really make all that much money, you can basically show them a pay stub, and they'll give you a ticket for $100, $115 or something. I can't remember if I got that or a scholarship ticket. I got a scholarship ticket. That's a little bit more. But once you get a scholarship ticket, you can only use it once. You can never get one again. So you have to go, or you have to say, hey, give it to someone else. So that's what I got. So that's why I went, because I you only get to use that once.
Now, that does really sound like a great festival to go to, simply because you've got all the art, you've got apparently lectures, people talking about different stuff, everything under the sun, probably.
Yeah, and when I went, it was a for-profit entity, so it's a for-profit company. Now they're making the switch to a non-profit. I'm not sure if they're fully non-profit now, but I know they're at least working on it.
Mm-hmm. They said on their site they have vendors. I don't know if they did then, but they have vendors.
I don't believe that. No, when they say vendors, they mean like theme camps and stuff.
I'm going to switch over to the survival guide that they have.
Yeah, I read the survival guide head to toe several times.
See, that's the thing. This is how
forums.
organized they are. Do's and don'ts. And right off the bat, porta potties, first thing.
No squatting.
Okay. And it said here, I guess it was under law enforcement, there are individuals who are, I guess, there to enforce the rules, so to speak.
No, the police are there, the BLM is there, so I mean, regular laws apply, except for like clothing laws. Because it's a private event. It's a private event, so you can do anything you want inside this private area. But
do not trash in neighboring communities.
You can't kill anybody. You're not really supposed to sell drugs. You're not supposed to have drugs, but there's drugs. Not everybody's on drugs, but there's drugs.
Interesting. And trash in neighboring communities is that you can be fined up to $1,000 for illegal dumping.
Yeah.
And it's a designated dumping area in each neighboring community.
There are, when you leave the town, there are designated dumping areas. The reason that this is a leave no trace event is because it's government property. It's government land. It's the Bureau of Land Management manages this land. It's like it's not a nature preserve, but you might as well say it's a nature preserve because they're not allowed to leave a single piece of trash within like a 10-meter radius of another piece of trash or something like this. And so they do a whole grid sweep pattern at the end for a couple months to make sure they've picked up everything. If there's something left back, they can't ever have it there again. So that's why it's a leave no trace event. I'm not saying that if they did this in some other place, it wouldn't be, but they wouldn't have the, well, it's a legality thing, really, so. I'm not saying they would have come up with that by themselves, but they might not have, so it could still be a big event that leaves a lot of trash, but currently.
Now, like you say, it's illegal to use marijuana, etc., but I'm guessing this would be perhaps more of a marijuana event than an alcohol event.
You would be wrong.
Yeah, I would think it does.
So all of these art cars, these like big boats you see, and these like, they're like bar cars, really. They can't sell alcohol. It's all pooled together from like their theme camp, and they're just giving it away to anybody who wants to have a ride and have good conversation with people. And I mean, I met. So scroll back a little bit.
Okay.
There's three main structures there. One was the center camp, which you saw already. Now go back the other way. Oh, maybe you're already there. Yeah, there we go. Temple. So there's the man, which they build. There's center camp, which they build. And then there's temple. The man is in the very center of the circle. Temple is further back from that, and that's the playa where all of the art stuff is. Temple, it's an impermanence thing. So people will write like that's not really graffiti. There was some graffiti, but they actually sprayed it out later. Temple is, well, it's a temple. It's people leave messages, they scroll messages or they leave items of like people who died that year, or like when they want to like give something up, they'll like scroll it on the wall, and then once the temple's burnt, they burn it down. Then it's like it's a thing or whatever. So, but I met some priest dude there, so he was like a pro-lifer. We had some discussion. He wasn't very open-minded, if you ask me, but I mean, he showed up, but he was a hippie or whatever used to be. So,
Well,
Yeah.
so
the atmosphere, I'm thinking, like it says, radical inclusiveness. So you're certainly going to get, this Republican conservative, I would imagine, could get in some heated discussions with a lot of people at that festival. But he gave a 2-hour talk on freedom, and didn't sound like he had any
no,
difficulties.
I was talking with him sitting at the temple, and I was trying to explain like genetics and like behavioral stuff and whatnot, and he just wasn't buying any of it. But I wanted to see him later because I was trying to do this portraiture project while I was there of like a portrait of someone who's been there their first year, second year, et cetera, and see how far I could get. Unfortunately, I used film, I had a light leak, so none of it turned out. But I eventually ran into him a few other times. I was trying to find him for his portrait. He wasn't at where he said he was. I was just walking around, and there he was. So I took a portrait of him right there. But yeah, I lost all the photos. I had like some silhouette, like some barely silhouette, but it wouldn't have worked.
Well, everybody's got cameras. What about someone who doesn't want to have their picture taken? Is that pretty much impossible, I would imagine?
Yeah.
No. Well, people will, non-experienced people, non-considerate people will just randomly take your picture, or they'll walk up to you and just like snap a photo right away. I actually got a lot of compliments because like everybody would go up and snap photos. I would wait until everybody was done, and then I would actually ask them if I could take a photo, and they really appreciate that. So.
I'm curious about the prevalence of drones now. If they're going to.
They're trying to regulate that. I think they only had a couple incidents. But when I was there, they had an issue with skydivers. People skydive over Burning Man, and they might not have the best control to land. So some of them land like in the middle of a theme camp or whatnot instead of the middle of the playa. I don't know if that was necessarily a problem or just like an accident for that one guy, but I heard he like almost crashed into a tent. So.
I wonder, did you have any experience with people who were asked to leave? People actually, the law enforcement, they had actually took people out?
No, but the thing is big enough that there are statistical things that happen, like suicides and deaths, even like births and whatnot. There's a lot of weddings that go on at the temple, like a lot of weddings. Like there's one like every 5 minutes, it seems like. Yeah, but that's like one of the vehicles. That's not like that spider thing is not a drinking vehicle or whatever. They have a flamethrower on top of that thing. All of the big ones have flamethrowers, which is fun when it's cold out at night, but... What's that?
People go there to commit suicide? Like a hotel?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They're burnt out. So it happens. This year, there was someone who was accidentally killed via an art car. It made the news. I mean, it's 70,000 people, man. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And those vehicles, but I would imagine they don't really go very fast.
No, they're going at like
vehicles,
10 miles an hour, maybe 5 miles an hour. I think the speed limit is 10 miles an hour. And you can't drive a regular car in the playa, only art cars. I recommend a bike. If I go next year, I'm hoping to bring a fat bike. Big fat tires, I think would work a lot better. I brought my old like mountain bike I had when I was a kid because I was going to sell it when I got back. So I don't really care what happened to it.
This guy I'm looking at now, unless he's got an air-conditioned pack on him, he's got to be pretty uncomfortable. A little segue.
I'm hoping he did because I'm hoping he had an air-conditioned pack on him because that's an awesome idea if he did. The building next to it, that's the house of the flying spaghetti monster.
Ah, okay. There we go.
You can just barely see it on the ridge. Or the roof.
That'd be interesting. You have to register beforehand. So if you're like something like the Church of the Spaghetti Monster, which really isn't a recognized church, so to speak, he would have to register beforehand, and you might have to say a little bit about its exhibit, so he wouldn't offend anyone.
Any building or structure that's on the playa is registered beforehand, or when you get there, if it's a small thing, you can still put it up and just tell them where it's at so that they can notify people. And that's like there's a coordinate system in the little book that they give you of all of the art stuff. I think I saw everything. I had 7 days to see everything. No, 6 days to see everything. So I like to think I saw everything. I could have gotten there on the first day, but I was just so tired. I didn't want to go in at night, so I waited until it was daylight. I don't like driving when it's dark, especially one place that I've never been to. So.
And there's so much that just drives by you. Stuff you have
I
to
would have
watch.
totally missed the entrance to it, or the turn off to it, if I had gone at night, because I thought when I turned off towards it, I was going to get lost. I ended up getting there to Burning Man. I was like, oh, yeah, what do you know? I didn't go the right direction. But there is like 3 hours from where you exit the interstate before you get there, where there's no gas stations. So you gotta have a full tank when you leave that spot.
And I'm sure they've got to have. I imagine will cell phones work there? So for emergency help and things, I wonder.
There are select spots where the radio waves get through the mountains. I was actually, I think I was able to send like a couple text messages while I was there. But other than that, my phone was turned off. There was, I think there was actual municipal Wi-Fi this year. I could be wrong about that, but I think there was.
Yeah, that's. I mean, walking around and posting on Twitter while you're there would kind of defeat the spirit of the thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What's like there?
What's that?
What's reception like there? Can you get cell phone reception?
Yeah, well, like I said, you can get him in like 3 locations on the playa, and you have to stand right there. And it's like, oh yeah, like you talk to people, it's like, hey, have you ever gotten a cell phone? Yeah, if you go out past like 50 feet past this art thing and go 3 feet to your left, you'll have 2 bars. You might be able to get a phone call. But that's only if you're standing on your foot and you spin around 3 times.
That's
So
kind of a dangerous structure there.
It's possible they could bounce the signals off the tops of the mountain peaks. I mean, there are relay stations as you're driving through the desert. But
let's see. Infrastructure. I don't know if it says anything about. It just says health, community services. Ice, like you said, ice sails, Earth Guardians. And a black rock.
They have a security force. They put a fence around the perimeter, and they actually have radar that to detect if anyone's trying to cross the fence. And they will have a vehicle out to you within like 5 minutes if you cross, and they'll know exactly who it was. Can still track you as you're going through the crowd. And they'll kick you right back out. So you can't sneak into this thing. It's the middle of the desert, and there's a lot of people, but they're still paying attention to who's paying to get in.
It looks like they've really thought of just about everything. They have the Burning Man information radio.
They've had 2 decades to get it right. So.
Yeah.
And it didn't go from like 23 people to like 60,000 within 1 year. It went 23 people to like 50 people to like 100 people to like 200 people, and then they got too big for the beach they were at, so like, hey, let's go to the middle of the desert. And then when they went in the middle of the desert, it really slimmed the people down because you have to really want to get there to go out into the middle of the desert. And then so you get people who are more devoted towards it.
I mean, even looking at how it says the outlay of the city is set up, very well organized. Different camps and things.
And I thought this was an actual thing that they did, but apparently it's just random vandalism. Right when the man is being burnt, people will go up and steal the street signs. Because everybody's telling me, oh, make sure you remember where you're camped at, and you can get there without looking at the signs, because they're going to be gone after the man burns. I thought that was a thing to, like, so you, like, mingle around with people. No, it turns out it's just vandalism.
Well, they're taking it out, so they're, you know, everything that comes in has to come out, so
Yeah.
they're kind of providing a service, I guess. What do you think, Dale? You ready to go there next year? For too many people.
It sounds like it's not a great place for an introvert, so maybe I'm out.
No. If you go with people who aren't introverts, actually, I'm an introvert by myself. When I'm with other people who are introverts, I'm the extrovert, and I get them to do stuff.
So
but
you
if
and
I
Patrick
go
would
with
make a great
extroverts,
team.
then they get me to do stuff, which is why I like to hang out with extroverts, because then I do stuff I would not normally do.
Yeah, I'd probably go. Maybe not next year, but at some point I will. There's a lot of people I want to visit down in the U.S., and maybe next summer I'm going to do a tour and fly in and fly out of several cities.
So the year after that, I met a guy at a hackerspace, German. I'm not sure if he was an exchange student. I think he was an exchange student. But before he was going back home, he was going to take Amtrak from Omaha to Las Vegas, maybe Reno, and then get a ride to Burning Man, and then take Amtrak up to Seattle, and then he was flying back to Germany. I suggest something like that. I would have loved. That's like my ultimate trip right there. I haven't been on Amtrak. I want to go. I want to see where it goes through.
Well, I'll fly to you, and then you can take me around and tour me.
Okie dokie. Hopefully my car is fixed by then.
And then think like Science Island, creating the community in
We
Science
should.
Island.
Ooh. Bingo. All right. We should go as a theme camp, Science Island theme camp.
Oh, that's Justin's idea.
Excellent.
That's Justin's idea.
Oh, Justin would never go to Burning Man. He's scared of it.
Oh, you mean at Burning Man?
Yeah. We should have
You know
a
what? I
Science
don't-
Island camp at Burning Man, and we should invite Kiki and Blair and Justin. Maybe we get
That
Justin
would
to
be a
show
great
up.
idea. That would be great. Yeah.
We have to start.
Man,
What's that?
because fire is great in space.
Yeah. It's actually harder to get tickets than you make it sound. They can only sell like 70,000 tickets because then it gets too big for the area to be handled, and maybe for logistics to get sewage and stuff in and out of the site because they have to truck it in and they have to truck it out. So you have to like
100,000 people.
jump on the tickets. The year after mine, they had randomized ticket sales, and so like you would put in for a ticket, but then you'd be randomly chosen to get a ticket, which made it really hard for the theme camps to do anything. So that kind of
How many
like
people have worked?
I didn't hear that. Say again.
How many people are working the festival? I know they have 70,000 attendants.
Probably 1,000, maybe.
Whoa.
It's broken into different departments, just like a regular city would be. So, I mean, a regular city has public or civil servants of like I would say a city that size would have about 1,000 civil servants in it, probably. What is that, like 0.1%? So.
Yeah, and when like for instance Burning Man, you get 75,000 people together for 7 days, and you have
No, sorry, that's like 1.3%.
so you got 70,000, 65,000 people together for 7 days, no violence, little or no violence.
No, I wouldn't say that. There's some fist fighting stuff.
But I think if the community is organized, and you have to have some kind of, I don't know, rules policing force. I don't have to carry guns or anything like that, but just somebody you're going to have some disputes. But if you have the organization, then 99% of the people will get along, because you have this kind of organized structure, but you also have a lot of individual personal freedom. And that's the combination I see at Burning Man. You have something that's very, very organized, but you also have a high degree of individual freedom of action.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
All right. Moving on to the next exciting story. This is an interesting one, because we're talking about time travel. This was an article in Scientific America by a physicist, Tom Ralph. It's interesting. Stephen Hawking. I don't know if you guys heard about this, but he threw a party, University of Cambridge, balloons, hors d'oeuvres, champagne, and everybody was invited, but no one showed up. And he didn't expect anybody to show up, because he sent his invitations out after the party concluded. He said this is a welcome reception for future time travelers. Probably a good thing he didn't get anybody to show up at that. And we're talking about closed time-like curves. The source of time travel speculation lies in the fact that our best physical theories seem to contain no prohibitions on traveling backward through time. The feat should be possible based on general relativity, which describes gravity as the warping of space-time by energy and matter. And as the rest of this article will show, it is also, time travel is compatible with quantum mechanics. Hawking and other physicists find CTVs abhorrent, because any macroscopic object traveling through one would inevitably create paradoxes where cause and effect break down. And a model proposed by a guy named David Duchess, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name, in 1991, said the paradox created by these CTCs could be avoided at the quantum scale because the behavior of fundamental particles, which follow only, it says, fuzzy rules of probability rather than strict determinism. It's intriguing that you get general relativity predicting these paradoxes, but then you consider them in quantum mechanic terms, and he says the paradoxes go away. Makes you wonder whether this is important in terms of formulating a theory that unifies general relativity and quantum mechanics. And they did a model. This is Ralph and his PhD student Martin Ringbauer. They did an experiment to try to stimulate that, what's his name, Duchy's model, Deutsch's model.
Just Deutsch, yeah.
Deutsche. Much of their simulation involved investigating how Deutsch's model deals with the grandfather paradox. Instead of a human being traversing a CTC to kill her ancestor, imagine that a fundamental particle goes back in time to flip a switch on the particle-generating machine that created it. If the particle flips the switch, the machine emits a particle, the particle, back into the CTC. If the switch hasn't flipped, the machine emanates nothing. In this scenario, there is no Pecoraro, I don't know what that is, deterministic certainty to the particle's emanation. Only a distribution of probabilities. Okay, what does that mean, guys? If the particle flips the switch, the machine will emit that particle. It says back into this CTC. If the switch isn't flipped, the machine emits nothing. Okay, got that. In this scenario, there's no deterministic certainty to the particle's emission, only a distribution of probability. I don't get that. I get what he's leading to. Duchesne's insight was to postulate self-consistency in the quantum realm, to insist that any particle entering one end of a CTC must emerge at the other end with identical properties. Therefore, a particle emitted by the machine with a probability of 1/2 would enter the CTC and come out the other end to flip the switch with a probability of 1/2, and binding itself at birth with a probability of 1/2 of going back to flip the switch. Anybody get that?
Well, electrons in orbits around atoms, around the nucleus of an atom, it doesn't orbit. That's sort of a false picture. And what it actually does is there's probability distributions of where it might be at any given point in time. It just pops in and out of existence is basically what it is. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
So I think that's the same sort of thing here, where it's the same probability distribution for if a particle goes back in time. It's based on that same principle, where it's a probability distribution whether it gets switched or not. But I'm missing the last half of, what are they actually getting at, and maybe they haven't got through it in the article yet.
We're dealing with probability, which is quantum mechanics, and I can get that.
I believe what they're saying is they're doing another version of the. Well, I think this is what I was getting at. It was they're doing another version of the grandfather paradox, grandmother, grandfather, grandparent, whatever. But they were saying it with a single particle. Instead of sending a person back, send a single particle back, and that single particle could go back and actually turn the machine on, which is kind of like this loop type thing, right? So maybe this single particle is actually stuck in that loop.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Or maybe it goes on. Actually, no, I think it has to be stuck in that loop because, well, time's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, so it's like it's not linear or anything, so it's like whatever.
We've got a couple of more paragraphs which will clear things up or thoroughly confuse us. In their new simulation, they studied this Duchesne's model using interactions between pairs of polarized photons in a quantum system that they argue is mathematically equivalent to a single photon traversing a CTC. We encoded their polarization so that the second one acts as a kind of past incarnation of the first. All right. So instead of sending a person back, this is what Patrick was talking about, through a time loop, they created a stunt double of the person and ran them through a time loop simulation to see if the doppelganger emerging from a CTC exactly resembles the original person. By measuring the polarization states of the second photon after its interaction with the first across multiple trials, the team successfully demonstrated Duchesne's self-consistency in action. The state we got at our output, the second photon at the simulation exit of the CTC, was the same as that of our output, the first encoded photon at the CTC. These weird evolutions enabled by a CTC, Ringbauer notes, would have remarkable practical applications, such as breaking quantum-based cryptography through the cloning of the quantum states of fundamental particles. if we can clone quantum states, you can violate the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which comes in handy in a quantum cryptography. You know what I mean? Because the principle.
Cryptography.
Okay, I never even heard of quantum cryptography.
Oh yeah, quantum cryptography can break anything instantaneously.
Instantaneously? What?
Well, that's quantum cryptography.
Okay.
It's either you make it with quantum cryptography and it's like uber secure, or you break it with quantum cryptography and it's like like the hardest cipher, if they can get it to work, is broken in like a minute or seconds or something.
I think that'll be my next certification.
They have to discover it first.
That's
the hypothesis.
No, maybe they can use their model, or someone else can use their model for cryptography. I get. Well, one important thing here would be the ability to marry space-time, general relativity, with quantum mechanics, both dealing with time traveling in I don't know, similar way. General relativity allows for time travel, and quantum mechanics allows for the probability of time travel. So that's something these two theories have in common. A way of uniting these two theories, perhaps. Probability. Now I could see you're looking at time traveling. What is the probability of being able to travel backward or forward in time? Now I could see that as a possibility, but it would be such an extremely remote possibility that the probability would ever happen is like 0.00009. So this is where you could say, yes, there's the possibility or the probability of trying for time travel. It's just not very, very likely to happen.
You can't go backwards.
Can't quite hear you, AJ.
You can't travel backwards, can you?
You can, but only if the time machine was invented at that time. Once you turn the machine on, you can go backwards in time to the point the machine was turned on. It's kind of like an anchor.
Right.
But you can't go backwards in time before the machine was turned on. So, if you invited people to a part, well, this is at least one hypothesis I've heard. If you invite people to a time traveler's party, that assumes that someone, somewhere, already invented a time machine and they can get backwards to that point. This is only based off of, like, Discovery shows I've seen, so I don't know.
Well, what's Doctor Who have to say about it?
Time is timey-wimey, wibbly-wimey, or what is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Anything in quantum mechanics, anything is possible. It's simply a matter of whether it's.
Well, not anything is possible. Otherwise, it's quantum. It wouldn't be. Well,
I thought anything was possible under quantum mechanics. It's a question of probability. For instance, they talked about going through a black hole. That would be possible, but the probability of you being able to do it, or us creating the technology to do it, is, 0.0500 It's all about probability.
I believe there are still rules in quantum mechanics. I don't think it's completely free and open. It's not like Burning Man. Actually, it might be like Burning Man. There are still rules at Burning Man.
I thought that was the. Well, they did talk here about breaking the uncertainty principle, but that's I thought was one of the keys for quantum mechanics, is that uncertainty. like Dale was talking about, you can't really say you know exactly where the photon is inside the atom. There's only a probability it'll be in one place and a probability it'll be in another. So you're dealing with, probability, not possibility, not exactness.
They're
Electrons, not photons, but whatever.
Right.
So what they're saying is because of general relativity and how time and space can be warped, I think what they're saying, like at the beginning of the article, they mentioned that you could create a loop of space-time by bending it so much, like with a black hole, that you can create a loop, and that loop could take you back in time. I think that's how they're theorizing you could go back in time. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody could survive that.
No. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article on grandfather paradox, which I know that's your favorite, Patrick. But it says this theory might lead to concerns about the existence of free will. In this model, free will may be an illusion, or at least not an unlimited one. This theory also assumes that causality must be constant, that nothing can occur in cause, whereas some theories hold that an event may remain constant even if its initial cause was subsequently eliminated. Free will? Come on, give me free will.
There's no such thing as free will. There is such thing as called free not.
Free not. Explain, please.
Let's see, who told me this? It was a neuroscientist, or someone who studied neuroscience, but not actually neuroscience. Well, they were, but it's for advertising, it doesn't count. So, the way I understood it, free will... Okay, so the Big Bang, set in motion a chain of events of atoms just colliding into each other. Or forming atoms, colliding into each other, forming molecule chains, and then the laws of chemistry interacting with that, and so you got this whole chain of events going down, which leads to life forms, which leads to the life forms evolving and whatnot. So basically, it's kind of like fate, actually. So your body is going to do what it was set in motion to do, but you have a brain that's, well, this is getting into the point where, like, is there an outside force acting on the body or not that's controlling the brain to do it? So you could say that the controlling entity of said body can choose not to do what was set in motion back in the Big Bang.
Okay.
That was my understanding of it. It kind of falls apart, but...
I didn't know I had any choice over the Big Bang.
No, that's not what I was getting at, but... Okay, I explained it wrong.
Well, when you say free will, what we're talking about is a bunch of neuron connections in your brain, correct? Neuron connections are firing off.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a chemistry, your body is a chemistry soup. It's going to react the way it's going to react based on the way it's going to react. And so it's just going to do it no matter what. There's no, like... That would be saying that everything I'm speaking of right now happened because it was set in motion at the very beginning of the universe.
Well, but you also just had the choice to say what you just said. And that's free will.
That's free not. I had the choice not to say it.
How about think of it this way? If you believe that our bodies, at their most finite state, run around the principles of quantum mechanics, if we function as quantum mechanics systems, That's based on probability.
I was just going to bring that up, right? So
our environment mixed with us and how our brain cells work in tandem. So we're affected by our environment, and our thought processes can be affected by our environment. And the probability distribution matrix between your inner environment, which is your body, and your external environment, the balance of all those things derive your decisions based on a probability matrix of this chaos between these two systems.
okay, we can go with that. I was also going to say more along the lines of what follow path I was discussing, and then you kind of branched off a little bit, but do it similar but different. Okay, so damn it, now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, okay. So
AJ, you messed up Patrick's brain here. I don't know.
Probability, right? It's the probability that this particular universe we evolved to this specific point. We're having this specific conversation. Was all probability based on the expansion of the universe and atoms being formed, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's the odds that the atoms are in configurations that caused me to say exactly what I'm saying right now, right?
That's free yes. Like, I have the choice to continue this conversation. That would be a yes, not a no.
You have the choice.
Right now, but that might just be the way your atoms were sent about.
Are your atoms affecting mine?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You've been in the Hangout.
Yeah, therefore,
you've been affected by what you have observed and heard in the Hangout. And that observation has caused an interaction in your brain.
Technology was created randomly because of what happened at the very... It's just like in Cosmos, where Tyson says, if that asteroid had been nudged just a little bit to the left, there may have been no life on Earth.
Yes, yes. So when you're sitting there and your brain is working, AJ, what it's dealing with, there's a bunch of probabilities or a bunch of possibilities. This is all quantum mechanics. It's all a matter of probability. So there's one probability that you may decide to continue in the Hangout. There's another probability you may not. Now there's probably, Dale talks about, we're just computer code. So it comes down to, percentages. Does the environment have a greater influence on the chemistry of your brain so that you will leave the Hangout, or did that environment cause the chemistry in your brain to lead you to decide to stay in the Hangout?
It just depends on how pervasive it is.
So, but this also falls into like the medical fields, right? Or
sure.
Health, whatever. So, the smoothie that I just consumed is going to affect the chemistry of my gut. That's going to affect the chemistry of my body. That's going to affect the chemistry of my brain, et cetera, and whatever. So.
And that will
okay, I want to get into another question.
That'll influence where this conversation leads.
So
or
let's
whether or not it's Science Salad built. I'm going to build it. I don't care if you're not going to build it. I'm going to build it.
Okay, let's say we could time travel. Would that even be a good idea? If I had the opportunity, let's say you had the opportunity, you could time travel and you could change the past. I would say no, because everything that happened in the past led to my current existence. And since I am personally happy with my current existence, I really don't want anything to change. And if you go on a bigger scale, you could look at the evolution of humanity, the evolution of society. Everything that's happened in the past is part of that evolutionary process, which I think eventually will lead to a better world. Okay. So what do you think?
one of the
What's your
physics
opinion?
theories-
Would you go back and change something if you could?
No.
One of the physics theories out there, and that's why they had the Hadron Colliders determine the parallel worlds theory, right? Where there are infinite universes out there where everything diverges into multiple paths. So if you go back in time, maybe you just end up on a different path in a parallel universe. That other universe still exists, the one that you didn't alter, but the one you did alter is simply split off.
Yep.
Also, so there's there's multiple ways of looking about how you're going to change the future if you go in the past, but the two that come to my mind are, and this actually kind of works with like Back to the Future, the way that haven't worked. So, has anybody watched the entire series of Eureka from Sci-Fi Channel?
No.
I haven't.
Okay, so Ed knows what I'm talking about, because one of the main premises for, I think since season 3, was they go back in time, and a series of events unfolds where it wasn't supposed to. It happened a little differently than it should have. But when they come back, the majority of the world is the same. It's only in that little like microcosm area that they happen to live that's changed the most, because it happened like a drop of water in a pond. There's big waves when it first hits, but then it slowly tapers out as it goes out. Now there's the other way of thinking where, like the butterfly effect, where you step on you step on a butterfly or whatever in the Cretaceous or something, and that changes the entire planet. Like we evolve to be lizard people as opposed to human people. But then you run into, with that particular scenario, you run into extinction level events, which pretty much wipe everything out on the planet. So if you did this before an extinction level event, the odds that you change something in the future are slim to nil. So you could kill a bunch of dinosaurs or whatever. The asteroid's going to hit, destroy pretty much everything anyways. And then those few things that evolve might not, whatever. So there's a bunch of different ways of looking at what's going to happen if you go back in time. But I mean, so like Back to the Future was similar to the Eureka scenario, because humanity pretty much had the same technologies or whatever. It was just that jackass became the multi-billionaire because he did some gambling or whatever. Biff. His name was Biff.
I'm thinking of unintended consequences. You think that if you go back, like the Holocaust, something really horrible happened. If you think you could go back and change it so it didn't happen, it's impossible for you to know the chain of events, all of the other chain of events, how they would change, so that you could wind up with a world that could be even worse than today's world by having changed something as horrible as the Holocaust and kept that from happening. Unintended consequences. And that's why I wouldn't even think about going back and trying to change the past.
Yeah. Preventing the Holocaust, though, is a really big change. Going back and talking to someone at the Holocaust, not necessarily that big a change.
Right. Well, you don't know.
You got the butterfly effect, or you got the droplet effect, so it could be big, it could not be.
You go back to one of those people. You go back to a Jew in the ghetto, and you say, hey, man, this is what's going to happen in the future, and that person gets incredibly motivated. And then you have a much more united effect, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe they're able to get a Jew to infiltrate the Nazis, and that Jew assassinates Adolf Hitler, or that Jew finds out how to create the atomic bomb, and he gives his fellow Jews the atomic bomb, and they blow up, Germany. That's unintended consequences.
Or it could be that the person who went back in time and talked to that guy at the concentration camp was why the way the world turned out today was because that happened.
Yes, that's possible. That is possible. What is this link? What do you think, Dale? Would you go back in time?
Yes.
All right. Good. We have someone. Why would you go back in time, and what would you change? Do you think?
I just want to know more about nature and physical reality of what we really live in. And by going back in time, you're testing a hypothesis to see what the actual nature of time and space really is.
But
You're observing.
Forward to find out more information?
What's that?
Wouldn't we want to go forward to find out more information about that?
Well, either or. By going backwards in time, you could test a hypothesis by simulating the grandfather paradox. Go back in time and prevent your own birth. You won't exist, or you will. If you do exist, then the grandfather paradox is invalid, and if you don't exist, well, you're gone. All in the name of science, though.
Yeah.
The reason that's a paradox, though, is because if the second phase of that, where you do kill your grandfather, well, then how the hell did you go back in time to kill your grandfather? Because you never existed in the first place. So
it's a paradox.
Well, yeah, but that would say that the laws of the universe would prevent that from ever happening.
I agree. That's why I lean towards parallel worlds, where everything branches off in infinite. Every moment, every microsecond in time, infinite worlds are splitting. And
right. No, the multiverse, or the multiverse. For every choice, there's a universe where the opposite happened. But that's really fixated on like humans being what causes the separate. But it could be that instead of this atom popping out of existence, or this electron popping out of existence here and reappearing here, that electron reappeared over here instead, and that's what splits the universe apart. Not necessarily that I made a different choice, and so that's why. But that would mean there's infinite universes. Or
Yep.
infinite verses. Sorry, infinite verses, because a universe is all inclusive.
Yep.
And then you kind of get into consciousness. You know? Consciousness kind of dictates reality.
There was a guy recently. I never actually read the paper on it, but the press releases were all like, this quantum mechanics physicist or whatever, or quantum mechanicsist, has figured out that consciousness is quantum mechanics or something to that regard. I never actually read it, so I don't know exactly what the details were, but I suppose I could buy that.
I think
Google
consciousness. I think we're arguing over different things or talking about different things. They're just, if it was a computer, it'd be different layers of abstraction. At the most fundamental layer of a computer, you have machine code where it breaks down into the zeros and ones. You can break it down further than that into voltage differentials that represent the ones and zeros. You can keep breaking it down, right? And it depends what layer of abstraction you're talking about, because consciousness, if you use the computer model to compare it, might be like layer 5 of the OSI model sort of thing. So at each level, you almost have to talk apples to apples to understand what's going on, because consciousness at that level, it's built on multiple foundations that may be infinite to go all the way down to quantum mechanic levels.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay. But I'm on a Mac right now. What if I go to a PC?
Then you would not be the creative individual that you are today. You would be some business guy in a cubicle.
I feel like
Pie charts.
What's the next article, Ed?
I'm ready to go for another hour on this one. Are you kidding me? I have one.
Number 2.
I have one additional question there. I don't know if it's a question, comment, whatever. But okay, you're in a universe, this particular universe. You go back in time, you change something that changes the events. Do you now go off into this new universe you've created? And if that's the case, what happened to the old universe that you were in before?
I don't think that's the idea. The idea is there are trillions, there's infinite amounts of Eds. Some are alive in certain universes, some are dead. It depends what happened at that branch, at that moment things branched off. So you're not going anywhere. You exist in multiple universes all at the same time. And that reality, that infinite realities are occurring all the time. So, and possibly maybe what's happening is every single scenario exists simultaneously in multiple universes.
Everything that did happen. Yeah, every choice you make is a divergence.
Okay.
Maybe,
just so we're clear, there's infinite verses, not universes. There's only one universe. That's why it's universe. One. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go with it.
Okay,
Okay.
we can go off to, this is one story I do want to cover because it's really fascinating in terms of science. And perhaps, Dale, you can, this is number 6. Can all you guys see number 6? Scientist discovers how to switch off autoimmune disease. And if you do see it, would you like to cover it, Dale?
Sure, I'd love to.
You can probably explain it better than me.
Okay, so scientists have made an important breakthrough in the fight against debilitating autoimmune diseases such as multiple sclerosis by revealing how to stop cells attacking healthy body tissue. Rather than the body's immune system destroying its own tissue by mistake, researchers at the University of Bristol have discovered how cells convert from being aggressive to actually protecting against disease. The study is funded by the Wellcome Trust, is published today, September 3rd, in Nature Communications. It's hoped that this latest insight will lead to a widespread use of antigen-specific immunotherapy as a treatment for many autoimmune disorders, including multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, Graves' disease, and systemic lupus erythematosus. I think I pronounced that correctly. MS alone affects around 100,000 people in the UK and 2.5 million people worldwide. Scientists were able to selectively target the cells that cause autoimmune disease by dampening down their aggression against the body's own tissues while converting them into cells capable of protecting against disease. This type of conversion has been previously applied to allergies, known as allergic desensitization, but its application to autoimmune diseases has only been appreciated recently. The Bristol group has now revealed how the administration of fragments of the proteins that are normally the target for attack leads to correction of the autoimmune response. Most importantly, their work reveals that effective treatment is achieved by gradually increasing the dose of antigenic fragment injected. In order to figure out how this type of immunotherapy works, the scientists delved inside the immune cells themselves to see which genes and proteins were turned on or off by the treatment. They found changes in gene expression that help explain how effective treatment leads to conversion of aggressor into protector cells. The outcome is to reinstate self-tolerance, whereby an individual's immune system ignores its own tissues while remaining fully armed to protect against infection. By specifically targeting the cells at fault, this immunotherapeutic approach avoids the need for the immune suppressive drugs associated with unacceptable side effects such as infections, development of tumors, and disruption of natural regulatory mechanisms. Professor David Wraith, who led the research, said, "Insight into the molecular basis of antigen-specific immunotherapy opens up exciting new opportunities to enhance selectivity of the approach while providing valuable markers with which to measure effective treatment. These findings have important implications for the many patients suffering from autoimmune conditions that are currently difficult to treat. This treatment approach could improve the lives of millions of people worldwide. It is currently undergoing clinical development through biotechnology company Apitope, a spinout from the University of Bristol. Research was carried out by academics in Bristol University's School of Cellular and Molecular Medicine and Department of Computer Science." So they have an image there, and it says aggressor cells, which have the potential to cause autoimmunity, are targeted by treatment, causing conversion of these cells to protector cells. So we have aggressive cells, which are attacking things that we don't want in our body. When they overreact, you end up with multiple sclerosis and a number of diseases. So it's these aggressive cells that are too aggressive. And they found a way through a targeted treatment to convert those into protector cells. Gene expression changes gradually at each stage of treatment, as illustrated by the color changes in a series of heat maps. So that's pretty, I think they've explained it very, very well for the novice. They're basically dampening that aggressive response by your immune system, where they found a way to modulate your immune system by ingesting or injecting these antigenic proteins and specifically targeting only the cells that are the aggressor cells. Does that make sense? Ed, did you catch that, Ed?
Yeah.
Do you know anybody
Yeah.
with multiple sclerosis or any sort of autoimmune disease?
Excuse me. Ah,
My sister's diabetic.
autoimmune, no. Diabetes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Is that really autoimmune?
I don't think so.
Well, do you have type 1 or type 2?
I have type 2.
I think type 1 is an autoimmune.
Yes, you could be right there. So they're changing the gene expression.
Yeah, by basically putting these specific proteins into your body, and it must be latching on to.
That's an amazing thing.
That is that. Like if this works out, you know, it's going to help a lot of people, and even it'll help in all sorts of unusual ways as they make these breakthroughs. Because even think about once you've helped that many people, the impact of financially what happens to in the world. Now all of a sudden that money isn't being devoted to long-term care, so it improves not just the person, but I think it has dramatic effects that are exponential, really. So, Patrick, you have type 1 or type 2?
No, my sister has whichever one uses a pump. I can never remember.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's type 2.
Okay.
Both can lead to it. In both cases, type 1 and type. If you don't control type 2, or if it becomes worse, then you can go to a pump, the insulin pump.
I think she's lost full use of her pancreas.
Okay, so the pump just simply it looks at your blood sugar and gives you the appropriate dosage of insulin. Is that what it does?
I don't know if it's fully integrated like that currently. I haven't really asked her. It's to the point where I don't see her using it, so it might be fully integrated. But it used to be she would have to prick her finger like 2 or 3 times a day, measure her glucose level with a meter, and then based on that information, she'd give herself more or less insulin. I don't know if she actually has a sensor now that's built into the pump that can read it without having to do a prick. I know they were working on that like 15 years ago, so they might have that now, but I don't know.
Does anybody know anybody with lupus? Because I have a friend with lupus, and that's a horrible disease.
I don't know what that is.
lupus attacks almost all of your organs in your body. It systematically shuts down everything. It's a generalized autoimmune response that it's awful. So yeah, I have a friend that has lupus, and there's no good therapy for it. So and it's definitely an autoimmune disease.
I know a woman.
I don't know if that's the same as the one where you have two immune systems and they fight each other and eventually won't have anything. It kind of leads to AIDS, I guess. I mean, it's not from HIV. It's just like they both kind of render each other inert after a while. And I think life expectancy for those people is only like 30 or something. I knew someone who had it. Excuse me. When I was like 15 or 16, I worked with them. It's a terminal disease, as far as I know. I don't know if they fixed that or not.
What were you going to say, Ed?
I was going to say, I think lupus is something that's very difficult to diagnose, as I understand it, because it can mimic so many other diseases. Lupus itself, people with lupus can live, I don't know if they can live a normal lifespan, but an almost normal lifespan, depending on, I guess, the spectrum of the disease itself. Some people have stronger cases of lupus and others have weaker cases of lupus. But it's a very difficult disease sometimes to diagnose, and so people can have it for a long period of time and get continually sicker simply because they were unable to diagnose it. But, like Dale said, there's no cure for it as far as I know.
Yeah, no, there really isn't anything that effective. There's some pretty nasty drugs I know that they take, but nothing effective. So, you know what? If they have some success, that'll be a really good thing. Hopefully, I think what is it called in the U.S.? It's the FDA there.
Yep.
Hopefully, these Health Canada, the FDA, and I think they've been pretty effective when they see something's working. They ramp up and speed things up pretty rapidly, comparatively, if you look at the past. So let's cross
We can fast track some things, some treatments. And it's a good example where we're able to really key in on what's causing a disease at the molecular level. You're now talking about controlling gene expression.
Yes, that's really important.
Very precise.
Exactly, and I think you make a good point there. That's why these government bodies are fast-tracking things, because we've never been this precise ever, and so there's a lot more confidence, I bet, in these new drugs, because we just have a clearer understanding. We're not doing a shot in the dark anymore. So what's the next?
I don't have any particular preference. Let's see, we can go to, we've talked the last several weeks about managing our water supply, global warming, for instance. And let's see if I can dig out the story. Vegetation. Global warming causes changes in vegetation. Different types of vegetation grow, and that has an effect on the environment. So what we need to do is monitor changes and manage as much as possible all the different changes that are happening, including vegetation. This is an article on global warming in the Christian Science Monitor by Pete Spotts. It says a warming climate-induced march of alpine vegetation up a large river basin in the western slope of the Sierra Nevada could slash by 1/4 the annual flow of water the basin delivers to California's thirsty Central Valley. The results of the Kings River Basin study imply the same type of risks hold for another 10 major river basins along the Western Sierra, although to varying degrees, say the researchers involved in the study. It would also hold similar implications for other regions around the world. The results also imply that in a warming world, some forests may have to be managed as much to ensure adequate water supply. Managing vegetation for stream flows has already been undertaken in some areas in the Southwest, where invasive plants such as TMARIASK took root, some kind of root, took root along the banks of a river, siphoning far more water than the native species such as cottonwoods. Groups have been removing this particular plant and other water-bringing invasives in hopes of maintaining and restoring normal systems flow. So we're talking about the amount of water that the plant absorbs. Based on the New Sierra study, such approaches may have to be applied on a much larger scale to alpine vegetation migrating up the mountainsides where it can be intercepted, then released as water vapor runoff from melting snows. The results highlight the need to be more scientifically based vegetation management and link that to water. At the heart of the study is a process known as evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration. It's the amount of water plants extract from the ground and eventually release to the atmosphere from leaves and needles as water vapor, plus the amount of water that evaporates from soils and waterways. This combined loss of ground and surface water to the atmosphere in a drainage basin is compared with precipitation to derive stream flows. The latest study, the researchers gathered data from instrument towers at different elevations in the upper Kings River Basin, as well as satellite data. And that's something, we're getting more and better information from satellites, which allow them to estimate the rate of evapotranspiration at various altitudes up to 12,000 feet. They found the annual transpiration was most intense at altitudes ranging from 3,800 feet to 6,600 feet, implying that this zone accounts for the largest losses in water working its way from the snowpack to the summit. Evapotranspiration dropped off significantly below and above the land. That's basically the gist of the story. So what we're talking about is monitoring the kinds of plants that are growing around our water supplies. Some plants taking more water, some plants taking less. So we have to do a much better job of being aware of how much these new plants in the environment, how much water they absorb, and take action when it's changing the amount of water available. Okay. Got through that. Patrick, give us a link. Google's project to cure... this is going back to the previous study. Google's project to cure death. You want to talk about it, Patrick?
Google's giving $1.5 billion in research money to their startup Calico so that they can cure death.
I'm laughing, but that just doesn't seem possible, obviously. Can't cure death.
No, but they can cure the diseases that lead to death from old age and whatnot, which would prolong human life substantially, yes. Which may get it to the point where people only die of freak accidents.
I agree with Patrick. I think that's where we're headed. I think, I believe they hired a few really preeminent scientists. One of them being
Amber Alert.
Cynthia Kenyon is one of them.
All right, continue.
Cynthia Kenyon in California, can't remember where she was before, but I think they hired her on, and she made some really impressive breakthroughs in an understanding of a molecular pathway called FOXO. So I imagine they're going to go after that. They found out that this this pathway, this FOXO, I think it's a gene, can modulate all these DNA repair systems and all these different things that happen at a cellular level. And someone equated it to kind of fixing a car. If you maintain a car and keep replacing all of its parts, and by parts that can mean at the molecular level, where we're talking about things as small as proteins and DNA repair, up to more crude things like replacing organs. I think that's what they're probably looking at, something in those areas, and it does make sense. I think it is just an engineering problem.
All gene expression, right?
Gene expression is a big part of it, understanding it, so that when you have that blueprint and how that blueprint will react in its environment, that's...
Dale is frozen.
I'm not.
We have frozen Dale. We have frozen Dale. Yeah. Understanding the effects of changing gene expression. It's really one reason why it can take so long is because you really got to understand all the effects that happen when you change the expression of a gene. It might have the effect you want, but it could also lead to other problems. Stating the obvious. I'm very optimistic, but I don't know how long it will take before things like you said, cancer. We certainly can prolong life, and I think well, take for instance prostate cancer. A lot of men in my age bracket get prostate cancer, but it's not a death sentence anymore.
Well,
in fact,
it's inevitable. It's inevitable. If you're a man, eventually you will have prostate cancer, regardless. So the longer we prolong life, the more likely you are to just get it.
Not if they cure cancer.
You were cutting out there.
Not if they cure cancer.
Well, if they can reverse, if they can, if they can change the expression in the gene that causes a cell to become cancerous, let's say a cell in the prostate. Now, if they can change that expression so that the cell doesn't become cancerous, then yeah, that's the perfect answer, certainly.
Yeah.
But right now,
are there people doing research on trying gene therapy on cancerous growths or tumors that would revert those cells to stop reproducing?
That's targeted, what they call targeted. Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Just shoot some stem cells in my prostate.
The problem with the targeted treatments is there was a guy, I think it was 3 years ago, he had a targeted treatment, a chemical, and he treated the cancer cell so that the cancer cell in some way would stop reproducing itself. And he tested it on stage 4 cancer victims who had basically 6 months to live. And it worked perfectly. Those cancer tumors disappeared in a couple of days. But if I think they treated like 32 people, and all but 2 of the people the tumors came back. So it was a life extender. It could extend the victim, these cancer victims by, I'll say, 6 months. The problem then was the cost of the drug. He had spent like $4 or $5 million, and so the drug company said that, you know, your results don't justify spending any more millions of dollars on this because it's only a life extender for some people. So,
You could have funded research for that much money.
Like I honestly, I think a good analogy, I think a fair analogy.
Justin is here. Sorry for interrupting. Just as we get to talk about the exciting subject of prostate cancer, Justin shows up.
The expert is here.
Just so we can take this amount of money funding wise into context. So $5 million may sound like a lot of money, but that's only going to pay for like 15 people for 1 year to work on this.
Well, I think we looked at a pie chart last week on funding for research.
I mean, it all depends how much each researcher is getting paid, but I mean, the researcher's getting paid, and then they have a big chunk for taxes, and they got a big chunk for the facility they're working in, and they got a big chunk for the materials they're working with, and then they have to pay the fees to get the regulations passed. So $5 million is not a lot of money. I mean, they can spend $1 billion on a pill.
That was about the diseases that have the best publicity campaign are the diseases that get the most funding. Those diseases, however, aren't the ones that kill the most people. And they're talking about the Ice Bucket Challenge. The old Ice Bucket Challenge generating millions of dollars for ALS. And the Pink Ribbon Campaign generating millions. I think breast cancer, there's been more funding generated for breast cancer than heart disease, for instance. But heart disease kills many more people than breast cancer does. Diabetes. I've got a disease that makes the drug companies a lot of money. Diabetic bread. I've got a disease that's very profitable for a lot of people. So there's a lot of work being done for my particular disease because it's a profitable one. You got another disease. What was the you get with a tick in the Northeast? I forget the name of it. They had a vaccine for it, Lyme disease, but it wasn't profitable. Not enough people were getting the disease. Ended the funding.
Yeah, my sister actually did a project for her. I think she was in middle school, which actually led to her. She was doing a project on diabetes in middle school, and her conclusion at the end was that they'll never cure diabetes because it wouldn't be profitable. But her doing that project led to her finding out later that she has diabetes. She was like, you know what, I think I have this. And so she eventually got tested for it and whatnot. But,
Ed, I think what you said reflects, this competition of, the money's invested in diseases that'll be profitable. I think that's what's happening right now. But my hope is for the future, a good analogy would be the early adoption of cell phones when they first came out. When the technology was new, barely any people had them. It was enormously expensive. And if you look at the evolution, because it's digital, just as medicine has been digitized now, we're at the infancy stage. We're at the initial cell phone stage. And what happened with the cell phone is it got 1,000,000 times more powerful and 1,000,000 times cheaper to own these devices, right? So I think the same will happen in medicine, where the continued digitization of what we're doing is going to bring the costs way down. And the drug companies, won't like that because their profit margins will slip. But I hope that's the path.
My hope is that they will find out that something is common to all cancers. Instead of having to come up with a treatment for each different kind of cancer, if they can find something that is common to all cancers, a gene somewhere in the cancer genome, and by changing the expression of that gene, you're dealing with all kinds of cancers. And that will be the big breakthrough.
I think very quickly, like they had a group of oncologists they interviewed last year. I think it was Forbes that did it. It was a video interview, and from the top, I think it was U.S. institutions. So they took their top 10 oncologists, and they all agreed that cancer very quickly will just be a chronic disease. It won't kill people anymore. So and that's from some of the leaders in the field. So let's cross our fingers and hope that that's right.
If you can keep cancers to stage 1, most stage 1 cancers are treatable. Now you want to have a treatment that's not going to really give you horrible side effects. That's an issue. But if you can keep stage 1 cancers, identify that cancer when it's at stage 1, you can almost always treat it. Stage 1 cancers, I believe in most cases, are not going to kill you. It's when it spreads and it becomes a stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4. That's the cancers that kill you. But stage 1 cancers don't necessarily kill you. Getting that diagnosis, I have cancer, okay, but it's stage 1, you're probably going to have a treatment that you can live with. And
I have a there's a link between all diseases known to mankind. Life. If we get rid of life, there won't be any diseases, and we can just everything will be good.
Okay, I guess I'll write that down somewhere and just mail in for my Nobel Prize.
Calico.
All we need is an angry scientist to like make some sort of thing that just wipes it all out. And it'll be really good. What's that?
All it takes is an angry banker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's
so
nearing.
Saying we need to get Ed angry.
It's nearing 11 o'clock. I'm going to This Week in Science, which you want to go on to watch. Patrick, maybe you want to try to get into message to Kiki or something. Whatever. I know Yanni wants to go. So I'm going to. Huh?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to Blair too.
Okay. You want to talk to Blair?
Oh, and I'll give a message about that comment we were talking about earlier. She wants me to correct this.
Wait, Blair's watching us?
No, we're chatting. She wants me to correct. Her type is more a nerdy lumberjack. And
well, you live in Arkansas. You're pretty close to lumberjacks.
Oh, I toss around trees on the daily.
All right. Saplings, you mean, right?
No, I'm talking about big 100-pound, 300-pound trees.
Uh-huh.
I use my hands.
I think maybe I'll just close the Hangout right now. Things are starting to get just a little bit weird here.
I think you'll have to move to the Bay Area before she'll consider
Too late.
All right.
Okay. Hopefully see all you guys.
So we starting soon.
Everyone check out TWIS.
I'll see you guys. Ending the